Hello, my friend. Here's a short clip on Schopenhauer's view on evil. Arthur Schopenhauer's perspective on evil is famously bleak, and it is rooted in his core philosophy that the fundamental essence of the world is not reason or a benevolent God, but a blind, insatiable, and directionless force he called the will. So, to him, evil is not an accident or a temporary kind of glitch in the system. It is actually an inherent, inescapable feature of existence. And he argues that everything in the universe, from gravity that pulls the planet to the hunger of the predator, is always an expression of the metaphysical will to live. It is quite a lot like Freud's libido, I always think. And as you know, Freud had to counteract that with destrido or thanatos, the desire to die, because otherwise things were rather out of balance. But here we go, we're talking about Schopenhauer, not Freud. So for Schopenhauer, the internal conflict that this creates is that you are constantly at war with yourself, because you have this gluttonous desire, this will to live, but it consumes a lot of the goodness in the world. So when a predator eats another animal, the will to live is as it were devouring itself, because one aspect of the will to live is winning, but the other is being devoured. So it is a kind of self-torn image of nature. And that is the source of all suffering and evil, he posits. So evil, he thinks, is the positive reality, whereas good is the negative reality, which is the opposite of what most people view it to be. So when we experience pain or hunger or fear intensely, that is a positive experience for Schopenhauer, because it is real and tangible, and happiness is simply the absence of that positive force. So when you're feeling good or you're feeling happy, it is merely because your pain or your discomfort is gone or negated, and therefore, there is a temporary absence of evil. So it's quite a difficult theory to defend, I think, because it's much easier to show that there is an equivalence between good and evil, or to show that good is the creative force and evil is the destructive force. But no, for Schopenhauer, it's like this. So this leads to things like egoism, evil acts like theft or cruelty or even indifference, which stem from your desire to satisfy your own will at the expense of others. And it also leads to something worse, which is malice or wickedness, which is a sort of deeper level of evil, which is a disinterested kind of malice, just causing pain for the sake of it, not to alleviate your own internal suffering or boredom, but simply because you can. So for Schopenhauer, this is the sort of desperate state an individual can get into when they feel miserable all of the time and believe that the only way to release that misery is to become malicious in apportioning more pain to others than they are experiencing themselves. Fortunately, Schopenhauer came to see that his theory was really quite like an impasse for human beings, and despite this very pessimistic outlook, he came to see there was a path through evil, which was Mitleid, which is compassion, it is empathy, it is the capacity to suffer with the other and to realize that you are not an isolated force in the universe. You are actually connected with others, and to learn to be aware and awake to the plight of others as well as to your own plight creates a greater purpose for human beings rather than this mad, constant suffering or imposing suffering to others. I have never found Schopenhauer very compelling, and I'm probably not doing him enough justice. I just think he got things wrong. So that was my attempt at Schopenhauer. I'm sure some people will defend him.